Guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 rares to take to level 60 to throw all your resources behind. Now when we go through this list, what I'm looking for in these rare champions aren't necessarily champions who can be completely viable and even average slash good through the mid game. I want to talk about champions because this is what I look for when I look at champions, especially early to mid game. I'm talking about rares who you can actually use in the end game as well, in at least one area of the game, because those are the type of champions that I like investing my resources in, because I'll know I'll be using them throughout the entire history of playing this game. One thing I learned about when I was kind of new to the game is there's a lot of rares that are actually viable, that are actually really good, that people don't talk about enough. So today we're going to cover some popular rares and maybe even a couple that you haven't thought through in terms of their overall capabilities and their versatility into the end game. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we're going to start with the two most obvious. So Apothecary is the best rare in the game in my opinion, really close to Coldheart. Coldheart's really close, but Apothecary and Coldheart in my opinion are the two rares that you can make a case that can be run all the way up until the end game. Obviously you can say the same about the other champions on this list, but Apothecary and Coldheart specifically can be used in multiple areas. Apothecary is a jack of all trades. You can use him in the arena, in campaign, you can use him in Fire Knights, you can use him in Ice Golem, in Dragon, you can use him everywhere. Clan Boss, I can just keep going on because of his awesome kit, giving just a ton of great speed to your party plus the heals. So his boon of speed on his A3, you guys already know Apothecary, but I'll go through it quickly. 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. That turn meter of fulfillment every 3 turns when booked, plus the increased speed is just super solid, and then heals a target ally by 35% HP. This heal can be critical on a 2-turn cooldown when booked up. Just a really solid champion. A 3-time at random attack on its A1 makes him viable even in Fire Knights. So talking about the other obvious one, it is Coldheart. So Coldheart is so incredibly good. She has a kit that's more useful. I'm not going to say she's overall stronger than a legendary, but she's more useful than about at least a third of the legendaries in the game. Coldheart is that good, guys, and you can legitimately run her up until the end game on multiple level 20 dungeons, including, you know, some of the most difficult ones, Fire Knight and Spiders. So her kit is a flurry of arrows, 4 times at random on the A1. Again, that's great for Fire Knight. On A2, it's an AoE, has the decreased accuracy, places a poison debuff for 2 turns if the target is under heal reduction, but it's really the Heart Seeker. That's her money ability. So Heart Seeker attacks one enemy, fully depletes the target's turn meter. Amazing for Fire Knight and, of course, for Spider. And then has a 30% extra 30% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Damage increases according to enemy max HP, so you can hit the spider for 1,000,000 plus on your Coldheart damage per pop. It's just insane. The Heartseeker ability is one of the most well-known in the game, and for good reason. Coldheart is an absolute beast. Her and Apothecary, again, are the two champions that you want to be upgrading and maxing out and putting the best gear that you have on them. Coldheart put a lot of crit damage, make sure her attack is significant, but keep in mind, this is based on attack and skills with attack and skills on enemy max HP, so it's great against pretty much every boss inside the game. The thing with Coldheart is she can be a little squishy, so it's about keeping her alive until she gets to the boss, especially in, you know, Dragons and in Fire Knight. Otherwise, you can use her everywhere in the game. She's incredible. On Apothecary, you just want to build him out with as much speed as humanly possible and a little bit of defense. So next up, guys, is Soulbind Bowyer. Now, Soulbind Bowyer is one of my favorite right now. She is a beast in the arena. You can use her all the way up through Gold Arena, and if it's not the end of the week, you can probably even get her, provided she has a good team around her, into the Platinum Arena. She is that good, and she has that unique of a kit, in my opinion, especially for a rare champion. I have her, and I'm going to be maxing her out myself. I have her 5-starred right now, and I will be, as soon as I get those chickens or the champions to feed into her, I'll be taking her 6. So an AoE on the A1 attacks all enemies. All her abilities have an extra 25% chance of getting a crit. So what that's going to allow you to do as the player is build her in a really awesome way where you put crit damage gauntlets on her instead of crit rate. Try to get that crit rate from all the rest of the gear. You put a nice crit damage amulet on her in gauntlets. She's going to be hitting like a truck, especially on her A2. Attacks one enemy, again, 25% extra of getting in that crit. Will ignore 75% of the target's defense. That is super solid, dude. I have seen her critting for insane damage. I saw a video on YouTube that she got a 300k crit. That's insane off of a rare champion that's not Coldheart, right? On her A3, attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance, can be booked up to 100% of fully depleting the target's turn meter. I would use all the books. She takes a lot of books. Check them all out, man. But you can book it down to 4 turns too. But I would use all the books on her, even though you're only getting damage on these first 2, which is not usually seen as being worth it. These are rare books, they're easier to come by inside the game, and they're worth it for her because you want that extra damage. You want that extra 25% damage on the A2, and really on all of her abilities. Anyway, I'm blabbing on here, but Soulbind Bowyer is one of my favorite rare champs in the game right now. Alright guys, next up is Coffin Smasher. You guys know I'm a big fan of Coffin Smasher. He was on my top 10 most underrated legendary, or not legendaries, rares. Easy there, Ash. He feels like a legendary, not really. He's not one of those champions like Coldheart that actually feels like a legendary, but he is a champion that can be endgame viable all the way through Nightmare on Clan Boss. And that's because he has a great kit for Clan Boss, especially on a counterattack team. So if you have that Skull Crown, that Valkyrie, or that, or Skull Crusher rather, the Valkyrie or the Martyr on your team, you're going to be pretty good with your Coffin Smasher because he's going to be landing that 50%, the strong version of decreased attack on his A1, which is exactly what you want. 30% chance when booked up, and then on the A2, attacks one enemy, 50% chance of placing an HP burn for 2 turns. He can be your HP burn because you can book that up to 75% chance as well. So you're landing HP burns and you're putting the most important debuff on Clan Boss with Coffin Smasher. He has a simple kit, and then his passive just adds to his overall utility inside Clan Boss. Decreases the damage enemies inflict with AoE attacks by 5%. Which is really solid. You have that and it helps out your Clan Boss team. It helps you survive even longer to put out even more damage, and he's a great rare option in terms of HP burn with also the attack down. He has a basic kit, but it's really useful in Clan Boss. Next up is Fel Hound, guys. Fel Hound, you already know where he's going to be used in campaign locations and in Fire Knight's castle, but he can be endgame viable in Fire Knight, provided you don't have that Skull Crusher or that counterattack champion on your team. He has the reflect damage, which is really useful, especially out of a rare, granted he is Void. Now his kit is attacks all enemies, so an AoE can help out with the earlier waves on the AoE on the A1. Then on the A2 has the continuous heal and the reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 2-turn cooldown. That's the key. You're always going to have that reflect damage up against Fire Knight. That's what makes Fel Hound so good, as opposed to, say, like a Warden, who you're going to have every 3 turns, 1 turn without that reflect damage up. Place a block damage buff on an ally for 1 turn on the A3. Kind of a handy little thing to have there in case somebody's about to die. Other than that, though, it's for Fel Hound, it's all about the A2 there, Flameborn Vigor. Guys, super solid champion to max out if you're lucky enough to pull him. So really, how could I do this video without including Kael? He's one of the starting champions in this game, but he's the best starting champion in this game. He's the only one that I'm going to include in terms of the starters on this list because he is the most endgame viable out of any of the starter champions in this game, specifically on Clan Boss up to Nightmare. You could even, if you have no Poisoner on your team, I guess you could use him, throw him in an Ultra Nightmare team as well, although you don't typically see him. By that point in the game, you usually find better Poisoners to have on your Clan Boss comp, but you could use him in Endgame Dragons and obviously anywhere in the campaign as well. Kael is definitely the best, like we said, out of the starting champions to max out. He's probably up there in the top, 5 rares in the entire game in terms of taking the 6 stars and maxing out and being a big part of your raid teams and your raid compositions for a long time. He has the weak version of poison on the A1, the strong version of poison on the A2, 4 times at random, which really helps against Clan Boss. Obviously, all those 4 hits are going to be going to the Clan Boss. And then he has that nice AoE with the turn meter filler of 25% for each enemy killed on the A2. Helps out in, obviously, campaign farming. So Kael, you guys know Kael. Do I really have to spend any more time on him? A super solid champion and just one of the best rares out there in the game. Hey, you don't have Fel Hound? No big deal. Take a look at Runic Warder, who is a dwarf magic affinity champion. He is really cool. As far as Fire Knight goes, Fel Hound still quite a bit better, and we'll talk about why. So on the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times, so the 2 hit on the A1 isn't too bad. By the way, Runic Warder is Fire Knight only for the most part. I mean, you can use him in campaigns as well, but you don't really see him outside of those areas. Attacks one enemy 2 times on the A2. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Really solid on the A2 there for Fire Knight again. And then places a 15% reflect damage buff and a 7.5 continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. Now, the reason he's not as good as Fel Hound is, again, we talked about it, Fel Hound can keep that up continuously with the 2-turn cooldown. His, when booked, is a 3-turn cooldown, so there'll be 1 turn every 3, every 3 turns that you don't have that reflect damage up there. Nonetheless, guys, he's a super solid rare champion, Runic Warder. Next up is Painkeeper. Painkeeper is a Void Dark Elf champion, and she has a really cool aesthetic about her as well. I can't get enough of the Painkeeper's look. Either way, she is used in Clan Boss, and again, you can use her similar to Kael all the way through Nightmare Clan Boss. Her damage is based on defense and attack, and then HP and attack on the A2. On the A1, she attacks one enemy 2 times and fills this champion's turn meter by 10%. On the A2, she attacks all enemies, and then she heals all allies by 15% of her max HP on a 4-turn cooldown, and you can book it up to get even more heal out of that. It's really solid. You built her with a lot of HP, and she can heal your whole team up. It's rare, well, it's literally rare to have a rare champion to have that sort of a heal power in her kit, so that's really solid as well. And then Combat Tactics, what it does is, on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, is going to decrease the cooldowns of all ally skills by 1 turn. A really nice ability to have there, and it speeds everything up, right? It can interfere with counterattack comps though, so kind of keep that in mind, that normally you're not running Painkeeper unless you have like all the math figured out, which is really difficult to do on a counterattack composition inside Clan Boss. Next up is Frozen Banshee, a Magic Affinity Undead Horde champion who recently got a buff, and it's really cool, guys. She's great for Clan Boss, and she can be used, again, like all these champions, through the mid-game, up until the early end game. So Death's Caress on her A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has an 80% chance, can be booked up to a 100% chance of placing the strong version of poison if the target is under poison sensitivity, which she has on her A3. On the A2, attacks one enemy, fills the turn meter of all allies by 2% for each debuff on the target. So again, as part of a poison composition, plus all the debuffs on Clan Boss, there's going to be 10 debuffs oftentimes on Clan Boss. That will be a 20% turn meter gain on a 3-turn cooldown, really solid on her A2. And then on her A3 has a 25% poison sensitivity debuff for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. You really need to book your Frozen Banshee, otherwise you're just not getting that value out of her. Poison sensitivity is going to increase the poison that you put out on the target by 25% per poison tick. That's really valuable and really incredible, the amount of scaling your overall damage on Clan Boss can do when you have Frozen Banshee on your team on a really nice poison comp. So the last one was between Reliquary Tender and Bellower. I decided to go with Bellower here, even though Reliquary, you can use her like Clan Boss and dungeons, end game viable if you're lacking the support champion. Both of these champions, the thing is both of them are viable up until the end game. Both of them are Void Affinity as well. However, by the time you get to the end game, you often have better options out there, but you can ride Bellower all the way up until the end of the game. He has AoEs on all 3 of his attacks, so he's doing an AoE attack every single way you look at it. It's cool to build him up in a stun set as well. If you put a stun set of gear, of artifacts on Bellower, you can get through rounds like you would not believe. If you're struggling to get to Fire Knight and keeping everybody alive, for example, or Ice Golem, put a Bellower on your team in a stun set because he's landing 3 AoEs, you know? Build him with high defense. Don't use him as a nuker. Build him as a debuffer and a crowd control type champion, you know, because he's really good at that in a stun set. Anyway, Frazzle on the A1 has the block cooldown skills debuff, 30% chance of that. Then another debuff, decreased speed, 15%, so it's the weak version of these debuffs on the AoE on the A2, and then on the A3 has the chance of the decreased attack and the decreased defense, again, both the weaker versions of these debuffs, but his kit is really versatile on the AoEs, helps with the CC, he just has a lot that he brings to the table to your team, does Bellowers. So that's going to conclude this list of 10 rare champions that I would advise you guys max out 6-star and ascend. They're really solid. Let me know if I left anybody off the list that you guys have and you guys think has tremendous value as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.